Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices hosted by World Information Transfer and focusing on the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We are very honored and pleased today to have Ambassador Francis Dubois, who was born and raised in Alsace, France, and had a very distinguished career with the United Nations. He served as the deputy coordinator of the UN Secretary General in the Palestinian Territories, then posted to Iraq as the head of the UN office with the rank of ambassador, and subsequently in Algeria and Tunisia. Since his retirement, Ambassador Dubois is an active member of several non-governmental organizations and serves on their boards. Presently, he is the president of Le Comite Fayette in New York, an organization that promotes French-American relations, and also he is the head of the French committee at the National Arts Club in New York. Over to you, Ambassador Dubois.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dourak. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you to my friend Hanifa Mezoui, who did the intermediary. I am very honored that you invited me, and I'm very pleased to share my experience. I was very privileged to have a wonderful career, wonderful life, and so I feel a little bit embarrassed to tell you all this because I feel like it should be told at my eulogy, and I should not be saying it. But since Hanifa insisted, so nobody can refuse Hanifa. Okay, so as you said, I'm born in Alsace, in Strasbourg, the co-capital of Europe, and this has helped me a lot because we Alsatian, we are bilingual, we speak German, we spoke German and French at home. And, you know, to speak German after World War II was not something very popular in France. So we were ashamed. We were complexés, as we said in French. But it helped me later on, especially when in Africa. Okay, so I graduated from high school in 1968. I just mentioned this detail because in 68, France was in total chaos, as you know. I mean, it's still in chaos today, but a little bit less. And so I was young, I was 16, I didn't know what to do. And there I got very lucky to get a scholarship from American Field Service program, which was created after World War II, brought young students from different European countries to the States. And so I spent one year in the States, in Minnesota, and this has really changed my life. So this is one advice I would give, you know, there is no coincidence. There is only encounters. As we said, it's an Arabic proverb, il n'y a pas de coïncidence, il n'y a que des rencontres. So this American Field Service, which exists today, changed my life because, you know, I discovered a new system and it helped my English. And there was a protocol with this American Field Service. We had to go back to our home country and to study, which I did. I did my law degree, and I went first to Strasbourg, then to Paris for my doctorate. And then another very important element in my life is that at this time, we had a military draft in France and I had to do my military service. So with a university degree, the French gave you the possibility to do it as we call en coopération, which is really the equivalent of the Peace Corps, the French Peace Corps, which I accepted. It was just double the time. But I said, you know, instead of spending a year and a half in a barrack in South France or Middle France, which was, you know, some kind of a waste of time, I'd rather go to Africa. And so I ended up 3 years in Côte d'Ivoire, in Abidjan. And again, I discovered Africa. There was nobody in my family had any colonial roots, so it was quite extraordinary. And I worked first for the Minister of Public Affairs, and then for the Minister of Culture. And again, I was very honored to serve. I was a young man. I was in the cabinet of the Minister of Culture, who happened to be Bernard Dadier. Bernard Dadier is the most important poet in Côte d'Ivoire. He was a wonderful man. He passed away last year at age 99. So, discovering a new continent, working in cultural affairs, working under the leadership of this wonderful person who was a great human being, very good poet, very good writer. And he helped me once I finished my my tenure with this Minister of Cooperation. He helped me to get an internship with UNESCO in Paris. So here I am at UNESCO in Paris. And this is how I tell everybody, especially the young people. I said, I started my UN career as an unpaid intern and at UNESCO. And so here I am, but being French, having French nationality, I could not get a post at UNESCO because, you know, the quota were full. And so I once at from this UNESCO post, which I enjoyed very much, I applied to several UN agencies. We have, as you know, we have 35 UN agencies on Earth. UNESCO being one of them in Paris. In New York, you have 4. You have UNIFEM for women. You have UNFPA, the Population Fund. You have, of course, the Secretariat, and UNDP, which is the coordinating body. And I applied to several, and I got an offer by UNDP for administration. UNDP being present in 150 countries on Earth. And at this time, now we are talking about 1980, 1981, UNDP was criticized for not being very well administered within the country. So the director of personnel, we used to call that director of personnel in those days. Now it has changed. Now we call it human resources. I call it inhuman resources, but that's besides the point. So the then director of human resources said, okay, if administration in our various UNDP office is not wonderful, I will ask some posts and we'll hire young university graduates. We ask them to commit themselves to be 5 years in administration, and we send them in various countries. So this is how I really got, once again, very lucky, and I got in UNDP as a young professional. And I was sent, of course, you were always sent to you know, what we call in our UN jargon, hardship posts. I was sent to Uganda. So my very first post with the United Nations Development Program was in Uganda, just after the war, after Amin Dada regime, and the UN had closed and had reopened, and we reopened. And this is my first encounter with as a young professional in UNDP. Again, I was blessed to have an extraordinary, wonderful boss, an American lady, Melissa Wells, who is still alive. Melissa Wells was the head of the office. She was the resident coordinator, resident representative. She had been US ambassador, the first US ambassador in Mozambique and Angola. She was born in one of the Baltic states in Lithuania. She was extremely beautiful, spoke 5, 6 languages, spoke French, we spoke German with her. She was an extraordinary person. I was very, you know, again, I was very fortunate to be to work in such an office. And from there, the UNDP brought me back to headquarters because they needed French speaking. Again, UNDP was UNDP, you know, is like the maid of the UN. UNDP being present in all the countries, whenever something goes wrong, UNDP is criticized. So now we are 82, 83, UNDP was criticized, saying, yes, at headquarters, UNDP has 3 working language, Spanish, French, and English. Nothing is done in French and Spanish. So we need some French speaking. And so I was brought back to headquarters, and again in personnel, in human resources, at the African desk. We were handling in those days, I mean, the young people don't remember those days where we had no mobile phone, we hardly had a computer, and we were monitoring. Imagine we were monitoring the 53 officers in Africa. I mean, that was the Africa desk, and we had to clear the various contracts of the local staff and so forth. So I did that, and after 4 or 5 years, we had this mobility requirement at UNDP. After 4 or 5 years, you had to move. So we are at the end of the 80s, early 90s. I saw that there was an opening as deputy in the Palestinian Territories. Many people, some directors whom I consulted, saying, don't go to Palestine. We were not allowed to use the word Palestine, number one. Don't go to the occupied Palestinian territories. There is no program. There is no, it's not good for your promotion. It's not good for you. Go to Asia. Asia was the best of the best. I had been on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem a few years before, and I was mesmerized by the beauty of the place, by the spirit and so forth. So I insisted. I said, no, I hear what you say. I would like to go to send as deputy. So I spoke to various people, and I insisted, and they insisted to send me to Asia. I said, no. I said, yeah. Anyhow, to make a long story short, I was assigned as deputy in the Palestinian, in the OPTs, we call them OPTs, Occupied Palestinian Territories, first in East Jerusalem, and then in Gaza. And the UN program, the UNDP program, was called PAPP. I'm telling you that just to see how intelligent we are at the United Nations. PAPP is an acronym with 3 P. And in Arabic, you don't have P. P doesn't exist. So, but again, you know, this is the UN and everything is possible. So here I am the deputy of PAPP, and I am sent to East Jerusalem and to Gaza. When people said, you shouldn't go, you know, there's no program, nothing is happening, the contrary just happened. Suddenly, in '93, we had small projects. I want to mention 2. One project was the assistance to the Bureau of Statistics in Ramallah. That was funded by some Norwegian funding. And every 3 months, I would see one of the experts of flying from Oslo to us, to the Middle East, to Tel Aviv, since we didn't have an airport in Jerusalem. And he was absolutely not interested in the project. And I got along very well with him. He was a bon vivant. We would go drinking, we would go visiting and so forth. And I thought that maybe he has a mistress in Tel Aviv. I mean, I understand. I am not as stupid as I look. I understand that the weather is much nicer in the winter in the Middle East than in Oslo or Bergen. So in August 93, he left and he says, Francis, I want to thank you very much for all your help in Mesa. You will be a little bit surprised to hear, but I couldn't speak, and so anyhow, I discovered 3 weeks later that this person, Mr. Terje Larsen, was the implementer of the Oslo process. And he is the one, he was member of the Norwegian Labor Union, and he brought together the Palestinian and the Israeli, and he was the pillar of the Oslo process. He's actually, when you see this very famous picture of President Clinton and the Palestinian and Perez shaking hands in front of on the lawn of the White House, Terje Larsen is just behind, and so I sent him a note. I said, thank you very much, congratulations for all the activities you did behind, in the back of our project, but we're very, very, very happy. So this was the Oslo Accord with, two-state solutions. We were very happy. We had hope. We still have hope, after 30 years, but it's, it's a little bit, it's not easy, and it's a little bit désespérant. It's a little bit, but let's not despair. So then, from New York, I accepted a post, and I was assigned as the deputy coordinator in Gaza. So imagine Gaza. Gaza is 360 square meters. It's a very small area. In those days, 25 years ago, it was 1.1 million inhabitants. Now we have 2 million inhabitants who cannot leave. It's a prison. I was, of course, again, privileged, being UN. I had a UN car, I had a UN laissez-passer, so I could go to Jerusalem and to the West Bank easily. But for the people, it was absolutely terrible. It was, I mean, it's to this, and it's it's only worse. It's only getting worse, and I was amazed by the resilience of the Palestinian. I come from a country, as I told you, from France, where the French strike, it's a national sport. When it's rain, when it snows, when there's too much sun, they're in the street and they protest. The Palestinian in the horrible situation, I'm still to this day admirative of their resilience. So I had mentioned that I want to mention another project that was in Gaza, and we got a grant from the Japanese government. The Japanese said, okay, we'll help the Palestinian, but we cannot help through the government for all kinds of political reasons, because we have to be careful. So we'll give our funds through the UN and UNDP. So we got one project I want to mention, which I was very fond of. It's we created a cultural arts center in Gaza. You will tell me, I mean, was that necessary? I mean, the European Union created an airport which was destroyed by the Israeli. UNDP had created a harbor which was also destroyed. So here I am with 150,000, and we created a cultural center. The mayor of Gaza, who became a very good friend, lent us a an old horse and a carriage and earth from the cemetery. And from this earth, our volunteers created bricks, and we created we built this cultural center, the architect being a young Algerian who we hired as a UNV, United Nations volunteer. So because I said at least, so we had TV, we had CNN, we had a cafe, we had exhibits. The first exhibits, I invited the most important painter of Palestine, who is still with us today and who is still on my Facebook almost every day, Taisir Barakat. I invited Madame Arafat, who was my neighbor in Gaza, and I called her. I said, Mrs. President, I would be very honored. She says, she spoke French better than me, so she said, by all means, yeah, I'm coming, and so forth. So we inaugurated this center, and we organized every month artwork. I use I can say it now, 20 years later, I will plead non-guilty, so I hope this doesn't go too far in what I'm saying in this confession. I would smuggle some artists from Israel to Gaza, and we would make exhibits and so forth. The Israeli knew and so forth. I mean, there is no question about that. So unfortunately, that art center was also destroyed 3 years ago, and I was very, very, very sad. So after a few years, after Gaza, the office of the Secretary General called me. I was in New York, and they said, I met the Secretary General, and he said, we will send you to Iraq. So here I am. I'm now in 1999. In 1999, I am the head of the office in Baghdad. I want to tell you an anecdote just to show you how wonderful this UN is, and how I come to New York to get my credential letters, which I had to present to the government. And my credential letters, which I had never seen before, it's the appointment of Mr. Dubois, but it was addressed to me, CC, Mr. Saddam Hussein, head of the president, so forth. So again, I said, I went back to the cabinet on the 38th floor. As you know, the 38th floor in the Secretariat building, the 38th floor is the highest, is where the Secretary General is. There is nothing above, just God. When you mention 38th floor, it's just below God. So I went to see the person who gave me, I said, excuse me, I cannot present that. I think it should be the reverse. So they said, no, yes. I said, I'm sorry, okay. So they redid it, and they sent those letters to the president of Iraq, Mr. Saddam Hussein, CC, Francis Dubois. So I still have the original in my archives, which I can donate to I don't know who. So here I am in Baghdad. Iraq was under embargo. There was no plane. We had to fly to Jordan, to Amman, and from Amman take the road. It was 1,000 kilometers, 600 miles on a highway, on a super highway built by Saddam Hussein, and here I was. So, the head of the UN offices we don't have residence. We have to find our own residence. So I'm looking at places. Of course, in those authoritarian regime, the head of the UN cannot live anywhere. I mean, he has to be monitored, he or she has to be monitored and so forth. But anyhow, I found a very nice house by the Gailani. The Gailani was a very important family of Iraq. The grandfather was prime minister under the king in the 1920s and so forth. So here I am. And I want to say something. My counterpart at the Minister of Foreign Affairs was a wonderful lady, Akila El-Hashimi. Akila And Hashimi was had a PhD of French literature from the University of Tours, spoke French fluently. We had, whenever we had meetings, one to one, we spoke French. And she was very close to the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tariq Aziz. So whenever I wanted to pass a message, I will tell Akila, and the message would go through Mr. Tariq Aziz. Just to give you an example, that was, now we are in 99, 2000, Pope John Paul II wanted to start the new millennium, wanted to start a big pilgrimage in the Middle East on the foot of Jesus, but also and he wanted to start his trip in Ur, where Abraham came from, and that would have been the beginning of his pilgrimage from Ur and so forth. So I had heard that there was some reluctance to have the Pope arriving. Why? Because Ur is in the Shia region of South Iraq and so forth. So I sent a very strong message. I said, excuse me, to the minister, to Tariq Aziz. I said, excuse me, this is a great opportunity. This Pope is very courageous. He will open, he will speak up to have the embargo lifted. And I beg you to accept his coming to Iraq. Of course, I was not heard, and the president said no, again, because he didn't want, he didn't want such a very important visit in Shia territories. So what can I say? It was a very interesting assignment, very interesting. I got one problem one day. I will just tell you as an anecdote. I was asked to, I got many people interviewed me and so forth, and I was always open to, like when Virtual Voices, when Hanifa asked me, I said, okay, I am shy, but I'm ready to speak. So one young man came, and he belonged to the newspaper of the son of Saddam Hussein. And so he interviewed me on various matters and so forth. I was very, very careful, very careful. And the next day, on the front page of his newspaper, he says, a senior official of the United Nations asked the lifting of the embargo against the Security Council resolution. So I was quite shocked. I got a call from New York, from the 38th floor. I said, did you say that? I said, no. He says, prepare yourself, because I think people are not very happy here at the headquarters, and they will recall you. Okay, so I said, fine. So this poor journalist was making probably $150 per month being a journalist in this newspaper. And so they sent me back, they paid me a mission back to New York. And, but again, in those, we never use the word dictatorship, but in those authoritarian regimes and in those hardship posts, one of my assistant, before I left, she says, by the way, I have taped what you said. And here is the tape, which I didn't know. Can you imagine? So I really thanked her very much. I took the tape, flew to New York. I was called by the political affairs here. And I said, excuse me, I did not say that. I would never say that. And then I said, and by the way, I've been here now 3 years. It's time for me to leave. Can I be reassigned somewhere? So of course, I said, no, you are indispensable. You are wonderful. No, you stay. Okay, so I was. This article was forgotten, and and a year later, I came back to New York. I worked 3 years at headquarters, and then I decided to take early retirement. I must say why. My successor is, of course, Sergio de Mello, whom I welcomed. That was June 2003. and Sergio de Mello, who was a wonderful one, the Brazilian, who was a wonderful man, and who was really preparing himself to become the next Secretary General. He was very much liked by Kofi Annan, but of course, he got killed in the terrorist attack of the 19th of August, which killed 21 people, my colleagues in Baghdad. So, and I did an interim stay in Algeria before I came back to New York, and again, my successor got in a very, very serious terrorist attack in Algeria. So I said, enough. I have done wonderfully well. I am very happy. I took early retirement and I left at 57, and I stayed in New York. And I again, one of those wonderful encounters. My neighbor in the building where I live on Gramercy Park is member of the National Arts Club. So she invites me to the National Arts Club, and I liked it very much. It became my second home. The National Arts Club has a few committees, and there was one French committee founded and led by an elderly lady who called me one day and said, I have a favor to ask you. Would you like to replace me? Because I'm getting old. So I thought to myself, I don't need her to call me to say that she's getting old. This I knew. But I said, yes, I will take over. And this is how I got elected triumphantly to become head of the French committee, since nobody wanted this pro bono job. And I am now, ever since, helping artists, promoting artists who, as I said, I don't know if it was written in my bio, who are really true messengers of peace. And we were last night at the National Arts Club. We had the author who had written, Thomas Mallon, who has written few books, and historical fiction. And so this is me. So I think I will stop here. I spoke too much. I'm sorry. I apologize. If you have any questions, by all means, I am with you.
Thank you very, very much for a very interesting and diverse life story. It was fascinating listening to you. I completely agree with you that authoritarian regimes are very devastating to any human development, and particularly since we're having more and more people in the world, and it will be a difficult situation as we continue. But I will now move to Susie Helen.
Yeah, but Doctor, can I just comment on something you said?
Yes.
You mentioned authoritarian regime and all, the difficult times. But I must say, under the regime of Saddam Hussein, there was promotion of women. As I said, my counterpart was Dr. Hakila El-Hashimi, who got killed the 26th of September, but that's beside the point. There was promotion of women, I repeat, promotion of education. The churches were filled. The churches were filled. They were, so, it's, anyhow.
All I can tell you that before Bush, I was at the UN when Bush was preparing the attack for Iraq. And I wrote him a letter reminding him that Saddam Hussein was a very, very mistreated child who was beaten severely by his uncle, and that basically it would be much better to talk rather than kill. I still have a copy of my letter. Of course, as you know, it didn't mean very much, and it destroyed, because I've been in Baghdad. It was beautiful. It's what happened to it was just terrible, but I agree with you.
I agree. Yeah.
Thank
you.
Over to you, Susie, for questions.
Thank you. Are there any significant achievements or exciting experiences you've acquired during your distinguished career with the UN that you could share with our audience?
I mean, the fact that I survived in those difficult posts is an achievement. The fact that I didn't have major problems to conduct, to lead an office, be in Palestine, be in Iraq, was, is an achievement. And in Tunisia was my last post. I don't think I mentioned it. And Tunisia was a very, very interesting post also. So I don't know what you want me to say about the achievement, my personal achievements. Those were very interesting assignments. And to the young people today, I will say, if you have a choice between, if you're looking for a job and so forth, if you have a choice between a few options, take the more difficult option, because difficult options, you will only do better. You will only do better and rewarded. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but
you did. Thank you. And that kind of ties into the next question. Maybe it's a different lesson you want to share, but what is one of the greatest lessons you learned as part of your time serving in the French Peace Corps?
I discovered a new continent. As I said, I discovered Africa. Mm-hmm. I come from this very conservative background, in Alsace and so forth. I discovered that you could be proud to be trilingual, because every African had, spoke French in Côte d'Ivoire, in Ivory Coast, but they had another language. So, for instance, just to give you, to complete this, when you would ask, I think it's still true today, when you will ask an Alsatian, I still speak the dialect, which I said, what is this? Is this German? And people in Alsace would say, no, it's a dialect, it's a patois, So I discovered while in Abidjan, I said, what do they speak in, German has a spoken language. So I said, what do they speak in Zurich? What do they speak in Munich? If they speak German, in Strasbourg, we speak German. So let's be proud of it. And let's be, this I learned from my first day in Côte d'Ivoire. Africa is an extremely rich continent with huge resources. How come the people are still poor, rely on outside aid, and which is because of corruption. I read yesterday an article on the 10 richest president of the continent. I will not quote them, but who has $1 billion when you are the head of state of, and there were 10. I mean, it is mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. And one African president said, let's stop blaming the colonial powers. We've been independent for 60 years. And in 60 years, we were not able to put ourselves together, and we're still relying on cooperation, on aid from various organizations. This is absolutely unacceptable. And it's really corruption. It's really corruption.
Makes sense. And can you tie that same theme to areas in the Middle East? Like my family's from Lebanon, for example. So I think of Lebanon, but I'm sure it's true for other Middle Eastern countries that are rich in resources and have plenty of opportunity, but due to corruption have been struggling. And 80% of the population's below the poverty line today. So any insight that you'd like to share on this topic?
Yeah, I'm very happy that you are from Lebanon. In my youth, Lebanon was like the dream country, and I visited Lebanon very early. In my first pilgrimage, which I mentioned, I also went to to Lebanon, and Lebanon was, was just a wonderful country. And what happened today? What happened today? And why? Again, why? I see that our Minister of Foreign Affairs, the French Minister of Foreign Affairs, is in Lebanon as of today, when they had this horrible catastrophe. The government, as you know, I don't have to tell you, the government of Lebanon was to be seen nowhere, and President Macron jumped the next day to help. I mean, again, I mean, it's Lebanon deserves better. Lebanon, is a wonderful country with wonderful people. I have now on the chat a question. Yeah, so I feel very sad for Lebanon, and again, we hope that the situation will be better.
Thank you. And
by the way, as you know, but I'm sure you know that many families from Iraq, the Les Bonnes Familles, would go spend the summer in Lebanon and would marry, would have babies, would go back. So there is a very close relationship between Baghdad and Lebanon. My chief of administration, a wonderful family, Baroudi, they were Iraqi Lebanese.
Yeah.
So I got a question on the chat, which, do you mind if I read it? No.
Sure.
But yeah, now they're asking me, I wanted easy questions, please. So now this is again a very difficult question. What's the solution to the two Sudan, being the North and South Sudan, that are in wars internally before the face of UN presence? Yeah. Yeah, I have no answer to this question either. What I wanted to say is that all those wars are family wars. And in every single family, unfortunately, we have problems. Look what is Russia and Ukraine. They're very similar culturally, religiously, and so forth. And now, for all kinds of reasons, I don't want to enter. Sudan, the same, okay, the South, you have an important Christian community, the North, Muslims, and so forth. We need, the politicians are at fault. And again, this is corruption. The politicians are at fault. I have the greatest admiration in the 19th century, in the 20th century. I was not born in the 19th century, sorry. So in the 20th century, for true politicians who were people of vision. And one comes to my mind is our President Charles de Gaulle, who was this French president who had left politics. They called him, and because France was at war in Algeria and so forth. And Charles de Gaulle had this vision. He says, excuse me, we cannot stay in Algeria, okay? This is history. We have to leave. We have to leave. Whether you like it or not, we leave. And he stopped the Algerian war and so forth. So what can I say? I have no solution for the two Sudan. I mean, I could not answer. What can I say? And again, it's very sad that whenever there's a problem which nobody can solve, then it comes to the Security Council, and they create a peacekeeping mission. And then, of course, the peacekeeping mission goes. I'm talking about Haiti, and then we are accused of bringing cholera, bringing AIDS, bringing all this, and doing all kinds of things and so forth. So it's very sad. It's very, very sad.
What are some of the main challenges you faced while working as an ambassador to Palestinian territories?
Challenges are opportunities. Challenges are opportunities. Again, we were sitting in Gaza. I said it again. Gaza is a prison. I was lucky enough. We have to speak to everybody. We of course have very good relations with the Palestinian authorities, and we have to speak to the Israeli. And I had excellent relations with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Israel. And so I'm not sure that the answer you want to hear, but this is what the UN is about. The UN is about, you know, the UN should be above those nations, and you know, it's there to promote peace, and we have to work very hard for peace.
Thank you. And maybe a tricky question from the audience, but are you satisfied with the UN's work in the Gaza Strip? What were the main issues and challenges when working there?
I mean, it's never enough. You know, when you have a country under occupation, locked, it's never enough. So we did what we could. We had funds from the various countries, as I explained. Of course, we could do more. But in terms of the political resolution, those two-state solution has to be done by the two parties involved, and we were just intermediaries, and we did our best. Unfortunately, 30 years later, we are still, you know, we haven't moved much, unfortunately. As long as you cannot open the borders, as long as you cannot, you know, people cannot travel from Gaza to the West Bank, as you know. And again, I mentioned family. You know, the Israeli and the Palestinian are very similar. You know, it's the same. We are all the same family. They are so. Let's have two-state solution. I'm still believing this. Let's have two-state solution, and will be, you know, it will be the Lebanon of the old, you know, of the 60s, of the 70s, which I loved. People would go, you know, to on vacation. It was the Hamptons of the Middle East.
Yeah, all the same people. Another challenging question. We have many audience members joining from Ukraine, so they're interested to know what you have to say about the fact that on the day of the disaster at the Kharkov hydroelectric power plant, the UN congratulated Russians on Twitter with the day of the Russian language. So it's been a tricky situation. Any views on this one?
I did not understand what you said. Are you saying the UN would congratulate the Russian for destroying the dam? No.
No, I think it was the day of the Russian language. They're still kind of included in the UN, so just sensitivity around that, given the destruction of the hydro plant happened as well around the same time.
I don't know what the message which was sent to the Russian authority. I think it's a catastrophe. It's a disaster. This whole war is absolutely horrible. This invasion is horrible. People cannot even speak. Like, you know, we had 5 African head of states going to Moscow, and they could not use the word war. They said the crisis, and of course that was, you know, of course noticed by Ukraine. War is never a solution, okay? War is never a solution. To invade one country is never a solution. For the US to have invaded Iraq and killed 275,000 people, Iraqis, was certainly not a solution. So, you know, it's very sad. But, you know, despite those horror, let's keep hope, and let's keep hope in the United Nations, because we don't have any other organization. Okay, you're going to say Russia sitting at the Security Council, of course, is how can that be efficient and so forth? But we don't have another system. Again, I said it's like a family. The world is a family with different branches. Some don't like each other, some hate each other, some love each other, and we have to work together.
Well said. Which UN bodies did you find most interesting to work with in your career?
I don't know how I will answer that. You know, to coordinate UNDP has no technical mandate. The mandate of the United Nations Level Development Program, founded in 1966, was to coordinate the work of those technical agencies. So here I am, you are the UNDP coordinator, you are the ambassador, fine. But you just have a limited budget, an administrative budget. So you have some agencies, FAO has this huge agricultural project, UNICEF, UNESCO building university, Makerere in Uganda and so forth. So, to coordinate, I have always said, to coordinate people who do not want to be coordinated is not an easy task. So how do you do that? So again, some of my colleagues started to quarrel and to war. Again, that was not an option because again, we have to prove and to live by example. So again, coordination. You have to bring people together at the same table, and any agency is wonderful, excuse me. I mean, not all agencies are present in the country. In Tunisia, I think we had 8. So, and the rest, the coordinator represents the one who are not on site. So every agency, has a mandate, and is as interesting as the other, being UNESCO for the museum, for education, WHO, very important for health, and so forth. So, yeah, and we were just the coordinator, people bringing people together. So some agency, I will not name them, some agency, but they are located in New York City, on 44th Street, said, who are you really? I mean, excuse me, why would you say that? Why would you, I am, yeah. So again, even within the UN family, it's like in any family, you have to make peace, you have to swallow your pride. In my very first, I have to say that in my very first job in Africa, in Coopération, in the French peacekeeping, I met, I was very young, intimidated, I met the UN coordinator, Monsieur Petit-Pierre. I remember his name. His father was the president of Switzerland. He was Swiss. In Switzerland, the president turns every year. You have another president. So, and he told me, so, we spoke and invited me at his house with his family and so forth. And he said, if you want to do a career, he said it in French, you have to swallow snakes, avaler des couleuvres, meaning you have to swallow your pride. And the more snakes you have swallowed, the more successful you will be. I have swallowed quite a lot, I must say.
Based on your maybe professional and personal experience, what has been like the biggest difference in maybe mentality and way of working between Americans and the French, and what you've kind of had to adjust to when working with groups of people from different places?
I didn't have to adjust. You have to respect other person, whether, they are in the field, they are in Africa, they are in refugee camps. You have to respect them. Okay, there is a huge difference. So you have to respect every human being. And so it's not a question of because, somebody has a US passport, and you have to respect and be respectful and respect the culture. I was very curious, I must say, of other cultures and religion. I mean, I will open, because this is a subject which has never been really talked about within the UN, because, but religion, as you know, is extremely important in the Middle East. The first thing people, I'm not going to teach you anything, dear Susie, when people look at you, immediately they will say, is he Christian? Is he Muslim? Is he... That's the first question. So religion is extremely important. When I arrived in East Jerusalem, in the early 90s, just by curiosity, I asked a courtesy visit to the 12 Christian head of the churches. You know, in Jerusalem you have, and then of course I went to see the Mufti and so forth. First to meet them and to see where they live. Some lived in palaces. It was absolutely very interesting for me. And so I'm sorry if I was too long in answering your question. The respect, you know, once you respect the cleaning lady who prepares your tea. Ahlan wa sahlan, whenever you have a guest in your office, you know, you have to be even more respectful, because you know the director and the headquarters bosses, they don't need you, but your team, your staff. So respect is the key word.
And on kind of that same note, but on a larger scale, what in your opinion are the key success factors in solving global problems and helping us stop wars among countries to achieve world peace? A complicated goal, but are there some smaller key success factors to break down at a smaller level?
Yeah, I mean, Europe. I'm not talking about Eastern Europe now, which is at war, but Western Europe has now been at war for 75 years. And the UN, again, the UN is the table where you negotiate. No, now we have to negotiate the climate change. We have to negotiate, you know, all the major concern for humanity. The population, you know, the increase of population, again, from 1 billion in the 1900, we are now what, 7 billion, 7, 8, will be 10 billions in 5-6 years. And Nigeria has 200 million and will have 400 million in 10 years, 400 million of Nigerian. So, all those are very difficult subjects, difficult problems, but you know, we have to be together to discuss them and to find solutions. When the French president went to Dakar at the beginning of his first mandate, and he mentioned, you know, this exceeding population, and of course some people said, I mean, who are you to come to tell us that? Excuse me, do we need you to tell how many children we need? Excuse me. So, you know, again, you have to be very respectful, and but again, for the young people, let's keep hope, and let's keep. We don't have we have only one mother. Okay, everybody has one mother, and politically we have one mother, and it's the United Nations. So you may criticize your mother, you may not like all what she does, but she's unique. And so please protect your mother and protect the United Nations.
Based on your work with the New York Arts Club, what role can art play in soothing conflicts between countries? Can it be a messenger of peace?
I always said that. I said it, and I repeat it. The artists that bring peace, listen to them, help them, promote them, and they are not civil servants. They are not bureaucrats. You know, often they are people of visions, of dreams, and you know, we live through dreams. And once we fulfill some dreams, we're getting towards peace.
In your experience and travels and working globally, have you observed countries that offer kind of the best living standards for their people and more access to resources? If so, what do you think is the reason for them being able to do so?
I think you have every year the index of the happiest country, where you know which Finland and Norway is on top, and I don't know, Zimbabwe, or you know, in the bottom. I really cannot answer this question. Again, I was privileged. I was always very well paid. I had, I had a secure tenure with a wonderful organization, the United Nations. So every country where I lived, I was happy. To live in a refugee camp, and you know that, Susie, being Lebanon, being Gaza, being, it's absolutely terrible. And again, I admire, I said it from the beginning, I admire the resilience of the people who are not revolting more and, accept their fate. And so, but again, also maybe to answer more completely your question, every country has great qualities. You have nice people. My grandmother, may she rest in peace, she was a very wise woman. And when I left for those strange countries, she said, you will always meet nice people anywhere. So for the young people, try to meet those nice people, help them, and again, and work together to build a better world.
If you're advising young people just starting their careers, what would be the main advice you'd have for them, especially if they're pursuing careers in international affairs or in the arts?
So first, languages is very important. You have to learn, you have to make sure that you are bilingual, trilingual, work and manage other languages, because, if you're monolingual, English or French, you will get nowhere. So work on your languages, that's very important. And then nobody will hire you at the UN or at the European Commission, if you are in your 20s and so forth. So what you do is volunteer in non-governmental organization, volunteer in, with even unpaid. And so you can put it on your CV, volunteer for Virtual Voices, volunteer for I see another message which I'm not looking. So you reinforce your CV, your resume, and you have a better chance to join the UN. It's often a question of of fate, of encounters, as I said, of luck, but to work. When after your studies, go to money should not be an issue. Go for the mission of the organization you work for.
Really great advice, and appreciate all of the well-rounded, thoughtful perspectives that you shared with us. To kind of close out, as a closing question, could you just suggest principles that are most important for young people to follow in order to bring about peace in the world?
Yeah, I wanted to say, so I mentioned it a few times, I will repeat it. So the overarching is respect, and then the second advice I want to give to the young people: don't waste your time. Don't waste your time on your tablet, on your phone, on your to watch stupid things and so forth. There is so much. You're now very lucky in 2023 to have access to, so do it productively, to increase your knowledge, to increase the knowledge of other people, of other culture, of other nations, and that will help you, of other religion. شكرا كتير حبيبتي سوزي.
Shukran. Back to you, Dr. Durbach, to close out. Thank you so much.
المدير مدير كبير.
Thank you very, very much, Ambassador. I would agree with you that volunteering for opportunities and to gain knowledge and understanding may be able to help the future generations. But the biggest problem from my perspective is religion or overpopulation. And overpopulation, adding 1 billion people every 10 years, this world cannot sustain it, and certainly humanity will not be able to sustain it. So thank you very much. It was a very interesting, fascinating presentation. And
where are you located? Where are you located?
Pardon?
Where are you located?
Oh, right now I'm in New Jersey.
Ah, you're in okay. So come to the National Arts Club. I mean, we're closed in July, August.
Actually, a very close friend of mine lives in Gramercy Park. I thought about
so
that.
we're neighbors. We're neighbors. You are. Once we reopen in September, let's organize something, and we can even invite Susie Halak, and I will show you.
We definitely have to invite Susie Halak and the people that work with me.
And
They are doing their volunteering.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. And Susie, thank you very much for hosting. And I wish you all a very lovely week and summer, and looking forward to seeing you in the future. Bye-bye.